In August 1971, a small ad appeared in a local California newspaper. It said, "Male college students needed for a psychological study of prison life. $15 a day." 75 young men applied. 24 were selected. Every single one of them was psychologically healthy. No criminal record, no history of violence. A coin was flipped. Half became guards, half became prisoners. 6 days later, the experiment had to be shut down. Not because of a technical problem, not because of an accident, but because of what the situation was doing to perfectly normal human beings. The man behind the experiment was Philip Zimbardo, a psychology professor at Stanford University. Zimbardo had one central question. Does evil come from evil people or from evil situations? He built a fake prison in the basement of Stanford's psychology building. Real cells, real doors, real lock, no windows, no clock. The prisoners were not simply told to show up. They were arrested at their homes without warning, handcuffed, driven to the police station, booked, fingerprinted, blindfolded, then brought to the basement and given a number. Not a name, a number. The guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, and wooden batons. The sunglasses were specifically chosen so prisoners could never make eye contact with them. Zimbardo himself took on the role of prison superintendent. Day 1 passed without incident. Everyone was still just playing a game. Day 2, the prisoners rebelled. They blockaded their doors with their beds. They taunted the guards. The guards didn't call Zimbardo. They handled it themselves. They got fire extinguishers and sprayed carbon dioxide into the cells to force the prisoners back. They stripped the prisoners of their clothes. They took their mattresses. The rebellion lasted a few hours. The guards won, and something shifted, because after the rebellion, the guards stopped thinking of this as an experiment. The prisoners were no longer students, they were threats. Going to the toilet became a privilege the guards could grant or deny. At night, prisoners were forced to use buckets in their cells. The guards refused to let them empty them. The guards began waking prisoners at 2 a.m. for random roll calls, not for security, for control. Some guards began giving prisoners degrading nicknames. Others made them clean toilets with their bare hands. The prisoners started to believe it was real. Some begged to be released. Others simply gave up and went silent. The researchers noted something they hadn't expected. The prisoners who stayed longest started defending the system that was hurting them. Within 36 hours, the first prisoner had a breakdown. He screamed, he cried. He became so disoriented the researchers thought he was faking. He wasn't. They released him. 3 more prisoners broke down and were released before the week was over. What was most disturbing wasn't the cruelty. It was how quickly it felt normal to everyone inside. Zimbardo's graduate students watched the abuse escalate night after night and filed report. Nobody pulled the plug. Meanwhile, some of the guards had become genuinely sadistic. One guard later said he had modeled himself after a character from a movie and frightened himself with how natural it felt. Zimbardo watched all of this and did nothing because he had stopped being a researcher. He had become the prison superintendent. On day 5, a woman named Christina Maslach came to visit. She was a psychologist. She was also Zimbardo's girlfriend. She had never seen the experiment before. She walked in, looked around, and was horrified. She watched a guard march prisoners with bags over their heads through the hallway. She turned to Zimbardo and said, "It's terrible what you're doing to these boys." She was the only person out of 50 who visited that prison and said something was wrong. 50 people had observed the experiment. Parents, colleagues, a prison chaplain, a public defender. None of them demanded it stop. The next morning, Zimbardo ended the experiment. The world's reaction was immediate. Power corrupt. These were the headlines. But Zimbardo said something more specific, and most people missed it. He said the guards didn't become cruel because they were secretly bad people. They became cruel because the situation gave them permission. The uniform gave them distance. The role gave them identity. The system gave them cover, and without anyone telling them to stop, they kept going. This is what Zimbardo called the Lucifer Effect. The idea that ordinary people placed in the wrong situation can do things they would never believe themselves capable of. The experiment was never replicated. After it, universities around the world rewrote the rules for human experiments. But the question it raised never went away. If you had been randomly assigned to be a guard that day, what would you have done? Most people say they would have been different. They would have resisted. But of the 50 people who visited that prison and saw what was happening, only one said something. And that one person was someone who had never been inside before. The experiment didn't reveal that people are secretly evil. It revealed that most people are waiting for permission to do what the situation asks of them. The guards didn't know they would become who they became, and neither would you, until the situation told you who to be.